Hello everyone, my name is Vincent Cavé and I'm here to present EuterPen, Unleashing Creative Expression in Music Score Writing. This work was done with Catherine Le Tondal from Université de Toulouse, along with Caroline Appert and Emmanuel Pietriga from Université Paris-Saclay. EuterPen is a music notation program prototype which allowed us to show that interactive surfaces have the potential to lower constraints over musical notation and help composers in their creative process. Music notation programs are used a lot in Western culture by composers who want to write and share their music. But these programs are strongly structured. They force composers to work on their final product, the music score, and do so by imposing many notation rules and automatic adjustments on the symbols and global layouts. All of this structure is useful to produce a legible and high-quality score, which follows the rules of Western written music, but it also impedes the more creative stages of the composition process, because composers need flexibility to generate ideas. So instead of relying only on their music notation programs, they often get away from it and its constraints and use a diverse set of tools which better match how they conceive music. Last year, in our paper Challenges of Music Score Writing and the Potentials of Interactive Surfaces, we interviewed 9 composers and identified 3 ways in which interactive surfaces could help bridge this gap between these programs that are highly structured but provide essential features and the need of composers to gain more flexibility. First, allowing users to temporarily break the score's linear flow of staves and adapt the layout to the specific task at hand has the potential to help them try things out. Allowing users to temporarily break the score's homogeneity and work with different types of notation and content, and especially handwritten notation, has the potential to help them capture fleeting thoughts, but also differentiate between work in progress and finalized music. And finally, allowing users to break down musical elements and manipulate them in a finer granularity has the potential to ease their workflow and enrich their experience. So we wanted to investigate these opportunities further and made them the starting point of our design journey. We engaged in a prototyping phase of 4 months on a Microsoft Surface Studio 2, and then reconnected with composers through a participatory design workshop to help inform our design. This was followed by a second prototyping phase of 4 months, at the end of which I conducted interviews with composers to evaluate our design. And their feedback gave credibility to most of our choices, but also allowed us to make some final improvements on the prototype. For the participatory design workshop, we invited 2 professional composers to come to the lab for a half-day session. We showed them a quick overview of the prototype and video demonstrations of the features, which led to discussions about their relevance and how they were mapped to interactions. And as we encouraged them to experiment with the prototype and explain things on their own material, we were able to gather a lot of detailed feedback and iterate on our features, but also generate new ones. Here is some of the feedback that we got for the infinite canvas feature. The composers reacted positively to it, and while one saw it as an ID box where he could organize his ideas, the other liked its potential to be a storage space, and wished to put as many resources as possible in it, especially foreign content like PDF files. It led to its surname, Pensieves, drawn from the Harry Potter world, but it also led to the realization that spaces between staves weren't enough, and we needed to add a more global space. But they also emphasized the need to gain more control over the content that is on the staves, which is something I developed after the workshop. They also appreciated the cohabitation between handwritten and engraved content, and the fact that handwritten notation is actually interpreted in the background and can be listened to directly, but also that it can be used to search for similar motifs among engraved notation. A composer even said that he would use it every day. Another popular feature was the ability to switch back and forth between engraved and handwritten notation in order to recall the process that led to what's written on the score. They were also interested in the ability to manipulate specific auditory attributes, especially to copy and paste rhythm and pitches more efficiently, and explained how they could be dragged outside of the score and into the pensieves mentioned earlier. They wondered how it could help them see hidden patterns in their score, but were worried about the visibility of those patterns. So this is something I investigated further. Now, after another 4 months of design and prototyping, we invited a broader set of professional composers to validate our approach through online interviews based on a questionnaire illustrating the features. And some of them had a lot of feedback. But don't take my word for it. I will show you some quotes from the composers in regard to their respective features and the final version of these features in EuterPen. For instance, two composers emphasize the need to have more control over the layout adjustment to focus on composing. The same goes for the possibility to insert bars free of any constraints, for instance without any rhythmic signature. Let me show you what it looks like. Here I make space in a measure by pushing the next one over the side to write music without knowing how much space will be needed. In the same spirit, it can be useful to insert a lot of unconstrained space with or without measure bars and draw them later. I can also adjust manually the density of a measure and fine-tune the layout later. Regarding the pensives, which are now in and around the score to help composers organize their workspace as they want, a composer really enjoyed the ability to have the engraved and fixed version of this material on the score and work in draft spaces without constraints. He saw in it the potential for stability of the content. Another composer liked the idea of having no key nor rhythmic signature in these spaces, and used them freely as blank paper sheets. They were also compared to a laboratory in the middle of the score. Here I drag the handle of a global pensive around the score and carve two other pensives in between staves. Confirming the need for multiple types of content in and around the score, a composer complained about currently having a lot of memos in his phone and not being able to put them in the score. Another wished to sketch diagrams to convey positions and movement to musicians. A third one, wanting to mix handwritten annotation and evolving content, explained to me that when the work in progress happens in rehearsal and someone is not there, he would like to leave an instruction manual. So here I search through a PDF file, I write some IDs, I import an audio file, a picture, and I can drop them from the pensives to the score. One of our goals was to give more power to handwritten notation in order to free composers from the constraints of engraved notation. For instance, by letting handwritten and engraved notation cohabit together. A composer explained that thanks to this, you don't have to ask yourself the question, is this a final version? Is this my draft? Because this enables visualing very easily a passage that needs to be reworked. Another composer liked that handwritten notation could be listened to and would use that with his students to add suggestions. Here I will show you how I listen to handwritten notation. By selecting it with a lasso gesture and clicking on the play button. And I can also listen to it in context, together with engraved notation. And engrave it if I am satisfied with this passage. However, I can return to it later and turn it back into handwritten notation. Another feature mentioned during the workshop was the pattern matching opportunities and the low visibility composers usually have over the content. Since then, I designed a minimap of the score showing the selection as a blue dot and its matches as a yellow dot. Once again, it's received positive feedback during the interviews, having the potential to help them find small pieces of material hidden in different parts of the score. Here, I search for a pattern focused on rhythm, and then I search for a pattern focused on pitches. I also rely on the minimap to see the matches and navigate to them. The paper and all of the material, including the code of the prototype, is available on my website. Thank you for listening.